A potential recession is on the way right now, and even though the USA is not in a recession based on the definition of what a recession is, the effects has already been taken place. The definition of a recession is when the economy shrinks for over 2 quarters. 2 quarters means 6 months in a single year. And that means that businesses make and sell lesser stuff overall for over 2 quarters. Now that's the definition of recession. However, even though the definition of recession is that, the effects of a pre-recession is still there, and I feel like people are already starting to feel it. The chances of having an actual recession in the next 12 months is very much possible, and it's all because of what happens in the past few weeks, right? Most experts actually put the chances of having a recession this year around 30 to 50%. And I feel like 30 to 50% is actually way higher than what people are comfortable with. Of course, people are more comfortable with having the chance of no recession, right? So now naturally everyone will be asking, how did we get here? How did we just get to this point in just a matter of weeks, right? The big reason why is because of the fighting between US and Iran in the Middle East. And the conflict pushed oil prices up really fast. I know I've talked about oil prices many times, and I've talked about this part where they fought many times as well. But the thing is, the prices of oil is swinging around $100 per barrel or higher. So higher oil costs actually makes taxes more expensive on everyone. Surprise taxes, right? Is what they call. Gas, shipping, groceries, they get exponentially more expensive because oil is the source of how they export these things, right? And because the people that sell this oil, they don't want to be the one that is taking the burden of these extra costs. So what they're going to do is that they're going to charge more. So the ones that actually get the burden is the ones that is paying for the retail prices. And also, of course, sometimes if the government wants to subsidize. However, the problem is that when these people actually get to feel the inflation, because clearly it has the prices is inflated, right? But how does this relate to recession is an indirect relation, however it is correlated. So what happens is that people will have to pay more for things, and this happens so suddenly so that the economy didn't even have time to adapt, right? People didn't have time to adapt to higher prices. So they are forced to adapt the fastest way possible, which is to cut spending. And to cut spending, it means that the circulation of money in the economy has lessened. And that is the start or one of the symptoms that would lead to a recession. So right now, the numbers actually look like this. The last quarter of 2025, the economy grew about 0.7%. For the full year 2026, the Federal Reserve, which is the US central banks that set interest rates, expects growth around 2.4%. So basically that actually means their GDP, like how much their economy grows, right? So some banks like Goldman Sachs trimmed their guesses to 2.1% because of the oil shock. Unemployment sits around 4.4%. People are gonna say it's not terrible, but I feel like according to the textbook, 4.4% is actually really bad. I mean, technically in the past they've always told you that 4% is already one of the worst situations, right? And it's just like how they tell you that 2% inflation is actually good, which doesn't make sense, right? But jobs are gaining really slowly, right? Inflation, which is when prices rises overall, is now forecast at 2.7% by the end of 2026. Meaning, right now inflation is around that as well, 2.7%. And they're estimating that by the end of 2026, it would be still around that level, which means that inflation is incredibly sticky. And also because faced with all the obstacles, up ahead, with all these war going on and all this oil shortage and inflation so on, I would say that 2.7 is actually considered pretty stable if we can actually achieve that by the end of the year. And that is for PCE numbers, which is the main measure of what the Fed like to watch. The Fed has just kept its key interest rate around 3.5% to 3.75% and still expects only one small rate cut this year. So what a rate cut does is basically it can make inflation fire up again. Because if you've cut rates, it means that borrowing money is cheaper. So people will borrow more money. However, I feel like Jerome Powell said that he's gonna run another term for Fed, head of the Federal Reserve, because he wants to make sure that if he can, he wants to make sure that the interest rate stays high. And that is actually pretty noble, I felt, because right now, what the American needs is actually a strong and stable system to get through this period of time. And I feel like actually a higher interest rate actually just makes more sense in the long run. In the short run, I get why they want to boost the economy, but at the same time, I don't think it's the right thing to do. I feel like they need more persistence and time. Even though it's gonna cause a lot of suffering, this is what's better in the long run. Because 4.4% unemployment rate is already ridiculously bad, but they still need it. So now to put it in simple terms, how this affects the economy is basically higher oil and inflation makes everything more expensive for families and companies. So people would spend less on fun stuff and general spending. Business will slow down hiring, growth gets weaker. It is called a supply shock, like hitting a gas on a brake at the same time. Basically, it's really bad because inflation is going really hard, but at the same time, people are pulling back really hard. That's what I'm trying to say. So far, the economy is still okay because AI spending and strong consumer saving are helping. However, the risk is still clearly really high because the situation appears to be far worse than what most people are able to prepare for. So what is going to happen next in the economy? I'm going to tell you exactly what these analysts has to say. Most analysts say that based on the most likely path that could happen is still a soft landing. Whether you believe that is up to you, because I think you can make your own predictions on that. But however, they say that the most likely path is still the soft landing, which is about 60 to 70% chance we avoid a recession, is because they say if the fighting ends quickly. So keyword is if, right? If the fighting ends quickly and the oils drop back to about $80 per barrel by the end of the year and growth stays around 2%, like GDP stays around 2% growth, then it will be fine. Unemployment rate will tick up a little bit, but life will go on. That's basically what they are trying to say. Like recession wouldn't happen, life would be a little bit struggling, but it wouldn't be the worst. However, this if is a strong word, right? If they stop fighting. And Trump is always trying to say that they're going to stop fighting soon and everything's going to end really quickly. So I guess that's where they get it from. But whether you believe what Trump is actually saying is another thing, because he can control the US with his mouth. However, I'm not going to get too politic, but I'm just going to say that having an actual war, that's a completely different scenario. It's unpredictable what's going to happen next, truly. So, but the second probability is that, but if the war drags on and oil price stays really high because they can't use that river in the Middle East to transport oil, then the chances of a mild recession in the second half of 2026 instantly jumps to 50%. Well, 50% is already way too uncomfortable for most people. Plus, you have to remember the definition of a recession is that it happens over a time period of more than 2 quarters in a single year, right? Which means that 50% most likely means that we're already in the zone, but we haven't got to the 2 quarters mark yet, if you know what I mean. So Goldman Sachs now says that there's a 30% chance that could happen. And Moody's Analytics is at 48.6%. And it says that it could cross 50% really fast if this war and crisis continue to be dragged longer. EY Parthenon puts it at 40%. Predictions market like Poly Market sits around 29 to 36%, which I guess is much lower than others. I feel like everyone have their own predictions, and I think you can also have your own predictions as well. If you do, please comment down below. In my opinion, I think it's very unpredictable because an actual war is very hard to predict. But in the most cases, if these are actually the scenarios that come out, these both would be pretty true in both sides, I would say. Unless they do something to the economy, like cutting the interest rates intensively, for example. So what the experts online agree on is that this is not the time to panic. The US economy has been tough and resilient, I guess, but it has been, as in past tense. That's what they're saying, but I feel like this is exactly the turning point. But oil and war are the main things to watch out for the next few months or two. Definitely keep out on the news. Watch whether Iran is backing down. Iran, Americans have different pronunciation of it, and some other have different pronunciations of it. The point is, you have to watch out for the war and what's gonna happen next. If the war drags on, or the war does not drag on, that is now the main thing you should focus on. Because this would strongly affect the oil price. This would strongly affect inflation, basically. It would also strongly affect unemployment rate, even though you don't think so, probably because you feel like you cannot feel the relation, but it's actually related, because when prices are more expensive, people save more, and that just causes recession. The thing is, the world right now is facing more like a stagflation, a pending stagflation. Like I said, stagflation is basically a recession plus inflation. However, in this video, I just want to explain to you how the recession part is going to happen, right? Basically, if you are looking to be getting through this crisis carefully, I suggest you to look into assets, right? Look into assets and see where you can preserve your money, because clearly the economy is unstable right now. So the only thing you can run to is a reliable source to preserve your money. And also, easier said than done, increase your income. Well, I don't know if you enjoyed this video with me, because I personally, I find it pretty interesting to learn all about this by myself. And I feel like if you want to join me in this journey, please like and subscribe. And this is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, comment down below your favorite part, or comment down below something you wish I will talk about, or you want to tell me about, or share your opinion. Please do that. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.